So the first thing we're going to do is talk about what are LOEs, just in case there's any confusion about LOEs, lease operating expenses. Sounds like a pretty boring accounting term, and it is, but as Al will, got some statistics we'll show you in a little bit, very incredibly important financial results for companies, especially in this world where we're trying to do everything we can to reduce our expenses. I'm not going to read the slide, you guys can read it as well as I can. But suffice to say, it is a massive opportunity for us to be able to improve the financial performance of our companies. So what do we want to know about these LOEs? This is where it gets more interesting. We need to know what our LOEs per barrel of oil equivalents are, and we need to know how we compare with our competition, since this impacts the valuation of our companies. We also need to know, especially in a time where the oil prices are volatile and crashing, we need to know which wells are economic. We need to know them on a timely basis, and we need to know which wells are dragging down the average LOE for the company. So are we putting more money into some wells that we shouldn't be, and maybe selling off? And how do you get accurate insight into the well portfolio? So it's not enough to know about it next month. You need to know about it today. And that's the real issue, is that we run our companies. I mean, there's nothing wrong with this, is we run our companies based on the P&L that we have in front of us next month. But this is based on estimates of accruals that we put into our P&Ls, which means we're basically running the company by looking in the rearview mirror. So the question that we've been asking ourselves at Data Gumbo is there a better way? Is there a way that we can provide a scorecard of exactly what's happening on a real-time basis, so that we can do something about it today, rather than halfway into next month when it's too late? So this is the big thing we are trying to get rid of. We're trying to get rid of having to do accruals, which, as we've said, are based on estimates. And the good news is that we now live in a world of transactional certainty. The world has been investing in IoT sensors for years. We've got data coming out of our ears. It's a matter of how do we use that data in a way that is useful and that can be used to drive financial performance of the company. So what we at Data Gumbo have figured out is a way of integrating the IoT data that you need from the field with the contractual terms that you have in front of you. And you may be saying, well, no, this is not the time to be doing this. We're in a crunch with the price of oil. We're trying to figure out what we're going to do from a company strategy perspective. But I would argue that now is exactly the time you should be doing it, because there are companies who are looking at this. We've been approached twice over the last week by E&P companies who have asked us to, if they were to design an E&P infrastructure from the ground up, what would it look like? The answer is that it would be, you wouldn't have half the systems that you have internally within your company today. You actually need an ERP. You need an infrastructure like Data Gumbo, and you need the IoT data you've got in the field, and that's pretty much it. You don't need all that other rubbish that you've got accumulated over the years. As one of my colleagues said, it's like barnacles that kind of grow on the bottom of the ship. So occasionally you need the bottom scrubbed. Talking about a ship. It's we've got a lot of dead weight, and there's companies who are actively working on this, that they've been looking at how they can drive these expenses out for a long time. So you want to be on the right-hand side, thinking differently about how contracts can be optimized and used more efficiently than the ones on the left-hand side. So to make this a little bit more concrete, this is an example of a use case we did for the Operators Blockchain Consortium. So we did a value calculator. We always do a value calculator before we start any work. to validate how much money the company could save. There's a company who sponsored this as part of the consortium. What we did is we measured how much water was picked up, how much water was disposed of, and how much water was put in a truck with a three-way match. And as long as the match was within 1.6% of all the numbers matching up, then it's an automated transaction for automated payment. And you can see that even on the very first pass, we were able to achieve 90% automated matching, and the ambition is to get that to 99%. So, and the cost of not doing anything is $12,000 a day. So you can see that if companies are aggressively attacking these kind of opportunities, there's significant savings. This is just water. You can imagine the same thing with diesel and crude chemicals and crude oil. There's big opportunities within our companies to be able to save money. The next slide, Maxine. The next slide shows an offshore drilling contract. Now this one is actually pretty interesting because it's a 520-page contract for drilling equipment, fluids, and personnel on board. We realized 98% precision with the existing contract, except we were able to generate the contract the next day into the next month. So we were asked to do it at a monthly contract. And to Al's point, this isn't just a benefit for the oil company, this is also a benefit for the services company. So the services company didn't get to generate the invoice for 60 days. So if they can't even generate the invoice for 60 days, then it's going to take them another period of time to get paid. That's 60 days of interest that they are carrying. So the ability to get paid early or on time is tremendous from a service perspective. And then obviously on the oil company side, they're also looking for efficiencies, and they're also looking for financial transparency. And this is just one rig drilling for a year, and the ability to save $25,000 just for these three aspects of the drilling contract is tremendous. Some other interesting aspects of this is this 520-page contract. It contradicted itself in 35 different places, and in order for us to automate this contract, we had to sit down with both sides and say, okay, what is the definition of time? What is the definition of midnight? What is the definition of any kind of measurement? Because it sounds like a ridiculous thing, but you've got time across multiple different companies and multiple different systems. You've got to be able to say what is a receipt point, what is a delivery point, what is the time, and what time zone are we talking about? We're working on one project right now where it's for diesel deliveries and it's based on the OPUS price. But if it's over the weekend, is it the OPUS price on Friday, or is it the OPUS price on Monday? And it turns out they had different ideas about what that was. So specificity in the contracts is incredibly important. So this is where it starts getting interesting. What we've been talking about so far is the items on the bottom of this page. So the items on the bottom of this page, labor and supervision, chemicals and supplies, etc. Those are what make up your LOE. So what we are determining is we can actually automate the contracts for every single one of these boxes, and what falls out for free is this real-time LOE, because as we are measuring exactly what's happening in the field, automating the contracts, then we are giving you real-time visibility into what is going on within your company. So this is the big aha moment for us, is that it's not just about solving point solutions, which is good. I mean, there's multi-million-dollar savings in each of these boxes at the bottom, but for free, you also get real-time LOE. And if you're a services company, you love it because you're getting paid on time. You're getting paid on time, and you're getting paid for what you actually deliver. And we're also talking to some banks who are interested in also getting in this game, so it may even be able to speed up the payments even faster. So this real-time LOE is no longer a hypothetical thing, which is very difficult to realize. It is now much more of a let's put together a blueprint of how, and a roadmap of how we can go about attacking each one of these opportunities to create this financial dashboard. And that's where Al and his team come in. The management consultants can come in and help you figure out the roadmap of how to achieve this. So this puts a little bit more concrete into the how this is done and the impact. The line at the top, the purple line, that is a simplified version of the payment cycle for one of our customers. It turns out that to approve an invoice within our customer, it was 34 steps. And what we're saying is, okay, we're going to take a measurement, and assuming that's the measurement is within the parameters agreed to both sides, we're going to make an automated payment. You don't need all those other steps. So this is what enables real-time LOE, because now you don't have all the other steps, you don't have all the other delays, you just have an automated payment. So it becomes a much more efficient process. It does require you to start thinking differently, obviously, about the controls you have within your company and SOX compliance and things like that. But those are aspects of the business that can be solved. They're not intractable problems, but just for complete transparency, they are things that we need to consider. Once again, that's where Al and his team will come in and help work with those issues. So why hasn't this been done before? The answer is, it's the old Barnacle story I was talking about before. We've got old systems with an infrastructure that's been put in place to support computer systems as of 20, 30 years ago. And the other interesting aspect is that when we were doing the offshore contract, is the data that you need to solve these problems is actually held in multiple different systems from multiple different companies. So that for that particular use case, we had data coming from the helicopter company, from the offshore vessels provider, the drilling contractor, the services company, and the oil company. So it's very difficult to solve it within the four walls of one company. So what we do is we go to get a single source of truth from the field. So we're using IoT data from the field. We're using that to automate the smart contracts, and then we're providing a distributed ledger so that which cannot be changed by either party, so that you've got transactional certainty, and you can use it for automating payments. So I thought you were the next slide, Maxine. Keep going. So this, I like this slide just because it brings it all home for me. My dad used to I'm old, I guess. My dad used to have an account at the gas station. He also used to have an account at the butcher, the local grocery store, and the milkman. We used to have milk delivered to our doorstep, so just to show how old I am. And so my mum would go and get petrol or gas, and get spare tires and the oil changed and everything else. And at the end of the month, the petrol station, gas station would send us a bill, which inevitably my dad would dispute and argue with him about it. And eventually he'd get threatened to be cut off, and he'd pay the bill. But that's how we operate our companies today internally. So as we all know, today we want gas, we go to the gas station, we swipe our credit card, we pump our gas, and we leave. Why on earth can't we run our companies with the same level of efficiency? And the answer is we can, we just don't. And so why on earth not? So this slide really kind of captures the transition that we're going through as an industry. So this is the DuPont formula. It was invented by the DuPont company in the 1920s as a way of integrating your income statement and your balance sheet, and to provide complete transparency into the financial operation of your company. And that cost of goods sold box at the top there is derived for an oil and gas company by these aspects of the LOE. So this is how we start looking at a roadmap of how we can directly impact the cost of goods sold for an oil and gas company. And based on the results we've seen from our customers, a 10% improvement in the LOE expenses is not a unreasonable expectation. And as Al will show you in a minute, that's got some interesting numbers. And these numbers here are actually from a mid-sized oil and gas company. They're taken directly from the publicly available information. So if you can save 10% for this one company, you can see on the right-hand side, that's got a pretty compelling impact. So this is a reality. You can use it for driving down your OPEX. You can reduce it. If the drilling, if and when drilling comes back, you can reduce it. You can use it for improving your CapEx. And you can also use it for making sure that you've got more accurate and transparent payments with your royalty and working interest owners. So ultimately what you're aiming for is this. You're aiming for the ability to have complete transparency across your company and be able to say, how much money am I spending with company X? How much money am I spending in region Y? And have complete financial dashboard of your operation. How do you get started? You give us one of your contracts. We load it up into the system. That will tell us what data we need. And we can get you from 0 to value in 90 days. Obviously, there's the change management aspects which need to be taken care of. As I keep on saying, that's where Al comes in. But the actual implementation of getting started is just load up our contract, tell us, we will figure out what data we need, and you can get going. And the good news is, because we've done so many of these, we've probably got most of the code written already, which we can reduce the time to results.
Thank you, Andrew. That was excellent. While I run the next poll, I have a question, if you don't mind answering. If IoT data is absent, does Data Gumbo recommend the types of IoT devices needed?
Yes,
I'm going to run a poll in the background. We
have an increasing number of companies that we're working with. Just to be clear, Data Gumbo is not in the hardware business. We don't provide IoT devices. But there is an increasing number of companies who we're partnering with. And the really interesting trend that we're starting to see is companies providing measurements as a service. So some of the E&P companies say, well, to censor this field is going to be $20,000. It's too expensive, it makes no sense. But there's, as I said, there's an increasing number of companies who are saying, well, we can provide that either cheaper or B as a service. So, and you only pay when the meter is running. So it becomes extremely cost effective. So if you have a lack of IoT data, then call us and we can probably put you, well, we can not probably, we definitely can put you in touch with the right people. Al, you have anything to add to that?
No,
another quick question. Oh, sorry, Alan.
No. I think Andrew covered it wonderfully. Thank you.
Has this situation, the 2020 pandemic, hastened the need for blockchain?
It's hastened the need for a renewed focus on cash flow. And that's cash flow per barrel, that's absolute cash flow. Capital spending in the US in 2020 is going to be down 50%, 50 from 2019. And the reason it's down 50% is we don't have access to the capital markets to actually increase debt and issue new stock. So we got to live within cash flow. So the more we can increase cash flow and improve cash flow, whether that be optimizing production or lowering LOE, and unfortunately there's a lower G&A component, which most people on the call are likely living with today or this year. So all of a sudden cash flow is, cash is king, cash is back again. And it's here to stay. So it's, that's why the timing of this is so appropriate.
Great, thank you. You just heard from Alan Carnrite. Alan Carnrite's got 30 years experience as an advisor to executive leadership throughout the industrial sector. He's up next. He's going to speak for us. I'm going to close this poll now, and we'll hear from Alan Carnright.
Thank you, Maxine. Andrew.
There we go. And I'll give you the mouse, and I'll try not to touch the mouse and interrupt with your.
Okay. I still don't have control. I don't think, Maxine, oh, there it is. First of all, I'll introduce the firm in a second, but we've been doing this for about 30 years. We're generally an energy-based consulting practice. And we always get asked about commodity price. And all I can tell you for sure is oil price collapsed in 2008, oil price collapsed in 2014, and oil price collapsed in 2020. All for different reasons. But that certainly looks like a trend, that these cycles are going to get shorter. So how do you plan for that? In our view, you've got to plan for a lower price environment and make all your decisions based on a low price environment, thus the focus on cash flow. Our focus as a firm, I'm not going to go through this, but we do a lot of work around cost reductions and helping companies optimize supply chains and operational improvements, all those things. And we've been pushing that, and we've seen some real savings across the industry. But there's another breakthrough that needs to take place, which is why we're so excited about real-time LOE. We as an industry invented the ability to drill to depths of the ocean and depths of the earth that we never thought possible. We invented fracking, horizontal drilling, real-time production at the wellhead. But in many ways, we're mechanics trying to fix a 1958 Chevy when it comes to back office stuff. We put in ERP systems to satisfy accounting goals rather than make the business run better. And what we're trying to move towards now is making the business run better. This is who we work with, a few of our clients. I'm not going to bore you with that. One of the things that I should say too is we are an investor in Data Gumbo. And the reason we were one of the early investors in Data Gumbo is it became clear to us that we needed to move towards more of a supplier or more of a vendor operator, better relationships, and drive costs out of the system for both entities. Because as you know, when we enter these environments, we squeeze the service companies. The service companies hope one day the price recovers and they can actually increase their rates, and it's a vicious cycle. So the reason we were so excited about the whole blockchain technology was the ability to maybe create an environment where everybody wins in a better way and get away from that cyclicality. Because as you're living through it right now, the service industries are not only getting squeezed and reduced in size, their capabilities leaving. So it's something that's a real live issue that we need to solve. When we do an LOE assessment, and we do 10 or 12 of these a year, the financial data always lags reality. As you all know, we're accruing 90 days before you actually start seeing what the expenses are. There's certainly misalignment of incentives with vendors and the operator. In other words, could we incentivize the vendors in a different way, or the service company in a different way? There's manual processes throughout the system, or you wouldn't have, as Andrew talked about, 18 different handoffs going on between to get an invoice paid. Even the roles and responsibilities aren't clear. Who's supposed to do what and at what time? Change management is near and dear to our heart. All that means is if we're going to do anything, we got to make sure that the people are involved in that, which means that there's a certain process that needs to be put in place, KPIs potentially, dashboards. So those are things that we're wrestling with our clients on a regular basis. Where we've seen opportunities, and hopefully some of our clients were on the call, but obviously management by exception, which leads to optimizing lease operator routes, streamline work order management, supply chain. We almost have to bid out our supply chain every 6 months because the market is changing so quickly. Clear targets and accountabilities, all those things are what we're seeing, and obviously technology. That's blockchain technology. It's also dashboards and basic ways of looking at the business that make decision making a lot easier. Again, doing things that help the field drive down costs is what we're focused on. The importance of real-time LOE. A lot of companies have made great progress in the areas I just covered, some of those areas. The next wave of efficiency is clearly going to come through technology and access to information, and that's going to lead to doing things differently. And our industry, no matter what study you look at, is viewed as certainly behind any other industry, and many would call us almost glacial in the way we move. And that to me, as somebody who's been in the industry longer than I care to think about, is disturbing and problematic for all of us. So we got to solve something as simple as real-time LOE. It is not as if we can't solve this one. The data is there. It's mutually beneficial for both the operating company and the service company. And the 5 or 6 spend categories that you see there, they represent over 75% of the spend. So it's not as if we don't know where to start to get real-time LOE. And that's why we're excited that Andrew's firm is actually putting this in place on behalf of their clients. Why is it important? This should shock everybody on this call. In the US alone, the LOE spend in 2019 was $48 billion. That's billion. That's according to Rystad. And as you can tell, it moved up with production, as you would expect, between 17, 18, and 19, but it's 48 billion. Imagine us taking, as a company, being able to take out 10 or 15% of that LOE spend. All of a sudden, you got poor companies becoming good, good companies becoming great, and great companies becoming world beaters. I mean, this is a major spend item that we can't, that we need to unlock the code on in different ways. And real-time LOE, we think, will be the next, well, we know will be the next opportunity to really get after this spend. I can tell you the work we do with our clients, just the blocking and tackling and looking at things differently in the field, we're seeing 10 to 15% improvements. That's before we bring in real-time LOE. So we know the dollars are there to really change the trajectory we're on spend, because obviously 48 billion, we can't afford that as an industry. Real-time LOE, we're back to where we started. Single source of the truth, integrated supply chain, both internally and with the vendors, as Andrew spoke to. We can't solve this within the 4 walls of an oil company, and the service company can't solve it within their 4 walls. So it needs to be an integrated supply chain solution that leads to integrated data into contracts, so a different approach to contracting. We need efficient business processes. I've yet to see where we've done this, where SOX has become an issue. We just got to look at it differently. But we satisfy all the accounting requirements with this approach. But it does take different business processes. And it takes a real commitment to making data-driven decisions. Because all of a sudden, where we say, well, let's wait 90 days to see what the actual data actually looks like. You know, September 30th, by mid-October, we're going to be having real-time LOE, and we can make decisions to shut in wells, monetize some assets, or figure out why LOE is moving in a different direction than what we thought. So we're excited by partnering with Data Gumbo. Data Gumbo brings the technology and the approach and years of experience now in putting this in place. And we bring some of the process and change management. So great times ahead, I think, but challenging times for industry. Maxine, I think it's back to you, isn't it?
Oh, great. Thank you very much. So there's lots of questions coming in. I'm going to ask one here. Is there any data within the blockchain that you would need to be mined for dashboards, or is it collected from IoT? This might be for Andrew, actually. Is this even possible to mine data in the blockchain? And then I'll run another poll while that question's getting answered. So I'll read that again, Andrew. Is there any data within the blockchain that would need to be mined for dashboards, or is it all collected from IoT? Is it even possible to mine data from in the blockchain?
That's an interesting question. Somebody clearly knows what they're talking about. So a blockchain is a lousy database. Blockchain, if you're trying to build a data warehouse or do data mining, then you need to, the blockchain is a great source of data because by definition the data is clean because the companies are highly motivated to make sure the data is correct because they're making payments of it. So what we recommend is that you record the transactions in the blockchain, and then you use that as a source of data to create a data warehouse that you can then mine for whatever you want to do. The blockchain is great for keeping a complete record of transactions. And this is one of the key points that we didn't talk about earlier on. Is because the data is coming from multiple different sources within multiple different companies. You need to be able to reconcile why a transaction happened, not just next week, but it could be next month, it could be next year or 3 years' time. So for audit purposes, and you may have changed suppliers or you may have changed computer systems. It doesn't matter because all the data that you need to reconcile a transaction is in the blockchain. So don't use the blockchain for mining, store it in a system that is designed for that, but do record your transactions in the blockchain. But the IoT data is what is used to automate and trigger the terms of the smart contract. So were chemicals delivered, were people delivered, was water picked up, was water delivered? Those triggers are what triggers the terms of the contract, which then gets stored in the blockchain.
Great. I think we can even elaborate on that offline, but that for now, I'd like to go back to a question for Al. It's a very basic one. Why don't we have real-time LOE now? Al?
Well, to be honest, I'd say the first reason is it's never been important to us. We really didn't put the emphasis on it. We were so used to dealing with an antiquated accounting type methodology where we just did accruals, and accruals were good enough. So Andrew's company started before the crash in commodity price, before the current crash in commodity price. So now it's even got greater emphasis on real-time LOE. But why didn't we do it before now? We've never focused on working with our vendors in a different way, and that's a harsh comment, but it's kind of true. And real-time LOE allows you, and the blockchain technology allows you to work with your vendors, so there's more of a win-win, as I mentioned before.
There's another question pertaining to that. Does real-time LOE mean one group wins and the other one loses, i.e. is it operator versus service companies or vendor?
No, I think it's just the opposite of that. I think it allows you to develop scenarios so that the service company can manage their business better, differently, but still satisfy the needs of the operator. So it actually allows you, and you get paid quicker. Right now, service companies are getting squeezed on both how long it takes to get the invoice processed because of all the manual processes and the time it takes for an oil company to pay them. So I'd say it actually is very liberating for both the service company and the E&P company.
Great. Andrew, how do we plan on eliminating the manual data entry from a paper ticket?
Paper tickets will not cut it. for what we're talking about. We have to have an electronic source of data. So there's electronic ticketing systems out there. If you need recommendations on that, we can point in the right direction. If you just want to use data straight off the meter, we can do that as well. But if you're relying on a piece of paper, then it's not going to be good enough.
Great. Aside from real-time LOE, what other major use cases for blockchain have you seen in the oil and gas industry?
How long have you got? So you've got automation of integrated drilling contracts. So we're talking about the use case in the Gulf of Mexico, so we're working on multiple use cases for that. So that's a huge one. So any kind of complex contract between one or more counterparties. So if you're drilling a well and you want to be able to track all the expenses associated with drilling a well, provenance, so tracking pipe, or we're working with a couple of companies on the intellectual property of the 3D printing. So that's a big one. Another huge one is the capital projects and the interest charges and the inefficiencies in capital projects. So if you go to the Construction Industry Institute, CII, 41% of the expense of an EPC contract is actually in transactional waste. And a large part of that is in interest charges, because if you've got a large oil company contracted with a large EPC, and then you've got a whole supply chain of smaller and smaller companies with weaker and weaker balance sheets, you've got therefore much higher, ever increasing levels of interest rate. The interest charges are phenomenal, and the associated delays and everything else. So being able to drive that expense out is huge. So I would say any kind of commodity haulage, provenance, integrated contracts, and then construction contracts. So those are the big buckets.
Sure. Talking of contracts, why is using GumboNet better than building smart contracts internally? That's a bigger question.
So that's a good question. So the blockchain requires people to be using the same system. So if you are a company trying to implement blockchain yourself, you're going to have to try and get everybody else to use the same blockchain. So let's say I am a large oil and gas company, and I decide I'm going to build a blockchain, and I'm going to go down and download a version of a blockchain infrastructure to implement smart contracts. I've got to figure out, okay, how am I going to get the data into this thing? How am I going to get the access to IoT data? How am I going to standardize that data so I can use it? How am I going to implement smart contracts? How am I going to handle all the security issues? How am I going to handle the development of the concept of a corporate node, so you can have multiple different user roles? And you got all the associated expense and risk and delay in doing that. And now you've done that within your four walls, going back to the whole idea of siloed data. Now I've got to go to my counterparty and say, here is the exact implementation of a blockchain that we want you to use. You have to use exactly what we tell you. Otherwise, it doesn't work. And you have to do that with everybody in your supply chain. So you have to convince your whole supply chain to use the exact same implementation that you have implemented. And now you're on the hook for maintaining that going forward, as opposed to coming to a company like Data Gumbo saying, I'd like to automate this contract. And we'll sit down with you and say, okay, we can automate that contract. Where's the data? The data is in this sensor, this sensor, and this sensor. And you can be working with blockchain this afternoon if you want.
Okay. Excuse me, Al. What software changes would a company need to make?
Well, internally, there's very little. There's certainly there's more process than software changes. I mean, the real challenge is making sure we get the data and the processes are in place in the field and in the accounting or whatever the back office function is. So it's more of a process change rather than a software change. The data still got to get into SAP or still got to get in some kind of ERP system. So all of that all of that is pretty transparent. Nothing really changes there. So it's more process, and what I would call, anytime we go through major change like this, there's a period where we got to give people a chance to work through it, which is called change management.
And how will Data Gumbo and CARNRITE Group work together? Is that a partnership there?
So we would sit down with a company. We have what we call a recipe for success. So how do we engage with a company about looking at the contracts, looking at the data, looking at how the actual technical pieces of the puzzle was to be solved. In parallel with that, there's a change management piece of it. So as Al was saying, what processes need to be reviewed within the company, what do you need to do, what do you not need to do anymore, and it's much more about what do you not need to do. And so we would bring the CARNRITE group in, or they would bring us in, depending on which way around it was. And so the change management aspect has to happen in parallel with the implementation piece of it. So that would be the interaction.
How would we start, though, just to add on to that? This is Al CARNRITE. How would we start is, what are the big value drivers that we're trying to solve for? If chemical is the big value driver in the field, or power, then we start with that. And, we can eat the elephant one bite at a time. And it allows you to build the use case, to build the competency and the proficiency inside the company, and work through some of the change management issues. So you might tackle a couple of LOE categories to get familiar with it and say, boy, this really did generate the value that we thought it was going to for both us and the service company.
So who would you say is the best sponsor in an organization for that type of change management? Executives, IT, operations?
That's a really good question. The supply chain leadership should be very supportive of this, because it brings some accuracy and real time to a supply chain issue. So generally the supply chain people would be supportive. The IT people clearly have to play some role, but it's really not a software that's got to be implemented change within a company. There's not a lot of that. So the people that should really be supporters of this are the people that run the operations. I mean, this is all about optimizing cash flow on behalf of the operator. So it's the head of operations, whether that be Midland or Tulsa, or whoever's running operations, either at a basin level or at a corporate level. But it's whoever's running operations is the likely candidate to really get behind this.
Great. And would you see any additional expense incurred to adopt a real-time LOE measurement, etc.?
Oh, definitely. I mean, there's going to be some process change, and again, it depends. From a CARNRITE perspective, you can either do it yourself, so you can get the data and change the processes and the change management, or you're going to use some of your benefits from the benefit case to hire a consulting firm like us. But that's the cost there. Data Gumbo obviously has a cost associated with it that Andrew can talk to.
Yeah, so we have a transactional fee. So we take a fraction of a percent of the value of the transaction. So, but we don't charge that until the system's live. So until the company's realizing value, we don't make money.
And Kay, in the LOE front, with our clients, just without bringing something as fantastic as blockchain and real-time LOE, they've seen about a 15 to 30 times return on their investment. So the dollars are big, and I'd like this, and they require a different approach, a different lens to look through, or we would have already captured them. And we provide that different lens, whether that be Data Gumbo or CARNRITE.
So in antiquated upstream software companies, how do you push the data out to the blockchain technology GumboNet? They're a slow-moving bunch, and it could be costly to change what they do already. What do you think about that?
So we at Data Gumbo, we've got a standardized API so that we can map between existing systems and the API to get into the IoT platform. So that helps significantly. We've got interfaces into many of the existing industries leading systems already. So that probably is work that if we haven't already done it, then we know exactly how to do it. We've got a staff of people who are specialists in doing that. So we have what we call a concierge service, a white glove concierge service. We provide the expertise to be able to get the data that you need to solve these problems. So the question is correct, right? I mean, we do have an antiquated system, but at the end of the day, as long as they're electronic, we can get the data. But as I said before, it's a paper ticket. We're going to need to upgrade something. But as long as the data is electronic, we can get it.
I'll just add, if I know companies are still dealing with paper tickets, but that in itself is the 1958 Chevy. So when we still, as a consulting firm, get checks sent to us. In today's world, that seems kind of antiquated. So if there's companies that are stuck in the paper world, it's now time to, because it's such a low cost to move off the software that's out there today.
Okay, well, I have about 10 or 12 more questions, but 3 more minutes. So we can take some of these questions offline. Do you want to have any closing statements, or do you want another question, Andrew?
I think questions are more useful.
Yeah.
Sorry?
Questions are more useful. Go for it.
So.
Just give Andrew the hard ones, will you?
How does the payment process work? Do you match invoices, tickets, and export them to an existing system? I guess that's your ERP answer from earlier. If you want to elaborate on that to make sure we covered it.
Yeah, let's clarify that. So what happens in the process is we take a reading from the field, and assuming that the reading is within the tolerance that is set by the counterparties, like I said, if you're on 1.6% of this particular water haulage, then we auto generate a pre-approved invoice for payment and put it into the ERP, which then goes into the payment run. So we're not taking an existing invoice, we are creating an invoice that is pre-approved payment and putting it into the ERP system for the payment run. So we're completely removing any manual steps required. So you think slightly differently about it. I mean, that is the archaic way of doing it. What the real bleeding edge people are doing is saying we are going to fund an escrow account, and as long as the measurements are within the tolerance we expect, we will make an automated payment, an ACH payment, and then we will reflect debit and credit in the ERP and skip the invoicing process altogether.
Right, and the last one for Al, just to round it up, do you think we've reached a turning point as an industry where people are willing to use data, even when we don't like the answer, to make data-driven decisions?
No,
Have we
I
reached
think
a
so.
turning point in the industry?
Yeah, Maxine, I think the industry's always wanted to do that. It's just been not a focus for us when it comes to LOE. So I think the industry's certainly, I mean, just based on the number of engagements we have with our clients, it's a big number that's out there that we need to improve on when it comes to LOE. So no, I think the industry's using data and ready to use data where they're not today in much more meaningful and progressive ways. And like I said, in many ways, we're getting left behind, and that doesn't feel good to us.
Great. Well, thank you both, but thank you, Al CARNRITE, for joining us today. We really appreciate you speaking to our audience today.
Thank you. Thanks, Andrew.
We sincerely hope this webinar has met everyone's expectations. There is a slide up right now. I'm going to show actually the poll results, but we're going to share this webinar. This webinar is recorded and we'll share that with you afterwards. But let me share some of these results. Here's the answer to what do you see as the biggest challenge? Manual processes. Let me Let's see, next one. Next result was, what would you benefit most helpful to your business around LOE? That would be, it's quite spread across the board. So there's a choice to select all that apply, so everything applies. Someone put something else, so I'd like to know what that is. I'd really appreciate you message me direct what that answer is. And the last poll was, will it affect the industry? You know, do you think that blockchain and smart contracts will improve the industry? And that's a huge 79% said they think it would improve it. 21% are still on the fence, and hopefully the questions and answer session that Andrew did answered that, and you would change that answer now if you had a chance. But I really appreciate you all coming on to hear that. I'm going to share with you the recording, and also a fantastic document, which I will share with you right now. I'm going to send this document to you. It's, let me see, show. Co-written by Andrew Bruce, Alan Carnright, and Katie Chrysler, empowering real-time lease operating expenses. And this is a fabulous little document that I'm going to send to you that will help you with all your questions, and you can share with your team. And great, thank you everyone for joining us, and we'll answer any questions unanswered. We're going to contact you direct and answer those questions direct. But please feel free to reach out to us, sign up for our resource library on our website, follow us on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Alan. Thanks, team.
Thank you. I'm gonna